Hola students, welcome to today's video. Our focus is still on la rutina diaria, daily routine. However, we're now going to be focusing on los quehaceres, chores, because chores are also a part of our daily routine. Now, to find out from someone how they help out at home, we ask the question, ¿Cómo ayudas en casa? ¿Cómo ayudas en casa? Y para responder, to respond to the question, we simply say, en casa yo, meaning at home I, and then whichever chore it is that you do, that's what you place there on the line. So the question, ¿Cómo ayudas en casa? The response, en casa yo, followed by whichever chore it is. Now let us look on a few chores. What do you think these mean? Lavar los platos o fregar los platos. Lavar la ropa. Planchar la ropa. Cocinar. Sacar la basura. Poner la mesa. Hacer la cama. Barrer el suelo. Quitar el polvo. Cortar el césped. Pasar la aspiradora. Here are a few more. Tender la ropa. Limpiar. Regar las plantas. Pasear el perro. Trapear el piso. So remember we said to find out from somebody how you help out at home. We ask, ¿Cómo ayudas en casa? Y para responder, en casa yo, at home I. And then the activity, the different chores that you do, that is what you'll place there on the line. So let us now focus on the response. Now, as long as the verb is regular, we're going to simply remove the AR, ER, or the IR from off the verb, and then we're going to add an O. So, for example, we have lavar los platos, right? Meaning to wash the dishes. So you want to say, at home, I wash the dishes. So you would simply say, en casa yo. And then we're going to remove the AR from lavar. When we do that, we end up with lav. Then we add our O, so we get lavo. So the full sentence would be, en casa yo lavo los platos. So the response, en casa yo, meaning at home I, then you put the chore. As long as it's regular, take off the AR, ER, or the IR from off the verb, and then you add your O. So let's say we want to say at home I vacuum, right? So to vacuum is pasar la aspiradora. So you'd simply say, en casa yo. Then we remove the AR from pasar, add our O to get paso. So the full sentence would be, en casa yo paso la aspiradora. So how would you express the following? So remember, remove the AR, ER, or the IR from off the verb, and then you simply add the O.
A few moments later.
So these are our answers. So notice, all I did was to write en casa yo, and then I kicked off the AR, ER, or the IR from off the relevant verbs and added the O. However, we do have a few irregular verbs. Nobody have any heart attack now. So basically, these set of verbs, them in them own a lane.
Me own a lane, na me own a lane.
That means we can't simply remove the AR, ER, or the IR from them and then add an O. They have their own set of rules. First up, we have our go-go verbs. These are the verbs which end with a GO in the yo form. So for these verbs, we can't take off the AR, ER, or the IR and add an O. No, they end with a GO. So our two verbs are poner and hacer. Poner changes to pongo and hacer changes to hago. Notice how both of the verbs end with a GO. So our chore is poner la mesa. So we would say, en casa yo pongo la mesa. The second chore is hacer la cama. So we would say, en casa yo hago la cama. Notice we didn't take off the ER from the verbs and added our O. Why? Because these are go-go verbs. They end with a GO in the yo form. Secondly, we have our stem change in verbs. Now these verbs, they undergo a change in the stem before we can actually put on the O on the end, right? So we have those verbs which change from an E to an IE. That's tender, fregar, as well as regar. So notice tender, as in tender la ropa, to hang the clothes, we change from an E to an IE. So we get tiendo. So we would say, en casa yo tiendo la ropa. Fregar, as in fregar los platos, to wash the dishes, we change from an E to an IE. So we move from fregar to friego. So we would say, en casa yo friego los platos. And finally, regar, as in regar las plantas, to water the plants, we would say, en casa yo riego las plantas. So notice, all you have to bear in mind for these three verbs are that they are stem changing verbs. So you change from the E to the IE before you go ahead and add on the O. So let's review what we have done so far. To find out how someone helps out at home, we say, ¿Cómo ayudas en casa? Para responder, we say, en casa yo. And if it's a regular verb, you simply kick off the AR, ER, or the IR from off the end of the verb, and then you add an O. However, remember that we have our go-go verbs. Hacer and poner, they end with a GO. And our three stem changing verbs which undergo a change in the stem before you add on the O. So far we have only been talking about ourselves, right? But you can also talk about the chores that other persons at home do. So to do that, we will need our other subject pronouns. So these are our pronouns. Do you remember them?
Don't you remember?
So remember, to say you in Spanish, that is tú, and we use this you when we're talking to our friends. So when using the verbs to say you, for example, you iron or you cook or you wash, we would remove the AR, ER, or the IR from off the verb, and we would add these endings. If it's an AR verb, we would add AS. If it's an ER or IR verb, then we would add an ES. So for example, planchas, for you iron, barres, for you sweep, and vives, for you live. So far, you have learned how to say at home I do this or at home I do that. You have also learned how to say at home you do this, at home you do that. So these are the endings that we have focused on so far. Now, we can also use the verbs to say he does something at home or she does this at home, right? We also have another you in Spanish which we use for persons in authority. So we have él, ella, and usted. But remember, instead of seeing the he, she, or the you polite, we can actually see the names of the persons we are talking about. Now, whenever we're talking about somebody else, so we want to say he does this at home, my mother does this, my brother does this, etc., all you have to do is to remove the AR, ER, or the IR from off the verb, and these are the endings that you would add. So you know how to say at home I do this, at home you do this. You also know how to say at home he does this or she does this, or you know how to talk about somebody who's in authority. And remember, these are the endings that we have so far. Now, teamwork makes the dream work. So there are some chores that you actually do together as a family. So to do that, we can use the pronoun we. So for example, we cook, we clean, etc. So remember, we in Spanish is nosotros. But remember, you might not necessarily see the word for we. You might see my mother and I, my sister and I, my cousins and I, etc. So whenever it is that you want to say we do a particular chore, you simply remove the AR, ER, or the IR from off the verb, and then you'd add these endings. So let us look on what you know how to say so far. So you know how to say at home I do this, at home you do this, at home he does this, she does this. You also know how to say at home we do this. Finally, you can also express that they do something or you all do a particular chore. So remember that they in Spanish can either be ellos or ellas, and you all is ustedes. And remember, you can use the actual names of the persons you are talking about instead of the pronouns. So whenever you want to express that they wash or they cook or you all wash, you all cook, etc., All you have to do is to remove the AR, ER, or the IR from off the verb and add these endings. So you now know how to talk about the chores that you do at home as well as the chores that other persons do at home. So remember, all you have to do is to remove either the AR, ER, or the IR from off the verb and add the appropriate endings depending on who you're talking about that does the particular chore. You now have an activity to do. For this activity, you simply have to read the paragraph and then respond to the questions which follow in English. The paragraph highlights a family talking about the different chores that each person has to do. So just read it carefully and respond. And that's it for this video. Adios.
Adiós.